here has an electronic device on them right now? Whether it be a cell phone, laptop, Fitbit, right? Almost all of us. It's not all of us. Who here is also conscious about recycling? Like, you make sure you do your part. Maybe not on a consistent basis, but you try to do your part. Again, almost all of us. Finally, who here made sure that their last electronic device was recycled properly? And by that I mean you found an e-cycler, which is an electronic recycler. You vetted their process. You understood exactly how that electronic was going to get broken down. Right, almost none of us. So this is the disconnect that we're going to talk about today. Electronic waste, more commonly known as e-waste. And this is not going to be a bash on the technological revolution, because technology has undoubtedly advanced our economy, our health, our lifespan, the way we communicate, the way we travel. But at what cost are these benefits coming? And furthermore, what happens to our electronics once they're used? Where do they go? So to answer these questions, we first need to identify how big of a problem e-waste really is. In 2016, the worldwide average amount of e-waste generated was 13.5 pounds per person. In America, that number was about 3.3 times greater, with the average American generating 44 pounds of e-waste every year. That equated to 98.5 billion pounds of e-waste that was generated worldwide in 2016 alone, 1 year. 1 year. Only about 20% of that was properly recycled. I think the most astonishing statistic about e-waste, though, is how valuable e-waste is. In that e-waste that was generated in 2016, there was at least $55 billion worth of valuable, salvageable material. Sounds like a lucrative business opportunity, right? So why aren't we doing more to recycle the other 80% of our e-waste to recover those valuable materials? Part of the reason is because it's so dangerous. While e-waste contains a lot of valuable material, as you can imagine, it also contains a lot of toxic material. Toxins such as arsenic, beryllium, cadmium. Some electronics have lead. Many other toxins that there are too many to name. Most of these toxins are housed in the components that are made of plastic, polyurethane, and polypropylene, and the likes. If these components aren't broken down correctly, then when you go to retrieve those valuable commodities, you're also releasing all of those toxins. So let's talk about these toxins a little bit, maybe to make it a little more tangible. What are all these toxins? Cadmium, for an example, is used in rechargeable computer batteries. And cadmium bioaccumulates in the environment once it vaporizes, either through incineration and burning or simply through overheating in a landfill. Once it bioaccumulates in the environment, we breathe that in. Anybody that's exposed to cadmium, the cadmium settles directly into their kidneys or into their bones. In kidneys, it causes kidney stones and can also lead to renal failure. In bones, it causes accelerated osteoporosis or osteoarthritis. These gentlemen suffer from osteoarthritis. And as you can see, a byproduct of cadmium is bone spurs. So those are those huge lumps that are shown in their hands and arms. While osteoarthritis is extremely painful, it's also degenerative, meaning that it gets worse over time and there is no cure for this. Another toxic material that's found in e-waste is lead. Lead is extremely dangerous because it causes intellectual impairment in children, and in adults, it specifically targets the blood, nervous, and reproductive systems. You know, lead poisoning. Now it doesn't sound so lucrative, right? Not true. The commodities that are within e-waste are extremely valuable. We're talking about gold, silver, copper, platinum. If it's recycled properly, there's a lot of money to be made here. You're also doing the planet a great service by salvaging any reusable components of electronics. So according to National Geographic, if you were to take all of the metals that were in just 100,000 cell phones, just cell phones, it would be worth $250,000 in the current market. Think about that. You could collect half of that right here on campus and pay off like an eighth of your tuition. Unfortunately, the current practices that are being employed right now to extract these valuable commodities are extremely primitive. Countries like Ghana, China, Vietnam, these countries have been deemed digital dumping grounds. They willingly accept other countries' hazardous e-waste simply so they can extract whatever value they can from them. And sometimes this means nothing more than somebody sitting on a mountain of e-waste, wielding a sledgehammer, cracking open electronics. Not only is that releasing toxins directly into their face, but once they collect all the valuable material, they then throw it into a burn pit, releasing the rest of the toxins, which then directly impacts the air quality for that entire region. And I know that sounds like a joke, right? It's really hard to wrap your head around somebody like sitting on a pile of electronics with a little sledgehammer, but this is how they do it. So another piece that we really need to address is how electronic production affects the environment on the front end. So I've already told you electronics are chock full of precious metals. So what does that look like for our planet? Well, in one cell phone, there are 62 different types of metals. 16 of those are rare earth metals. And rare earth metals are differentiated because while there's several deposits throughout the world, they're in very small quantities, making them extremely hard to find and mine. According to the Geological Society of America, in 2012, 0.4 million square kilometers of global land was affected by mining. Mining not only depletes our natural resources, right? We hear that all the time. It's depleting our natural resources. Very true. But there are two other extremely important issues that don't get nearly as much attention. Mining also causes erosion. Mining inherently strips vegetation, leaving those lands susceptible to flooding. So what's the problem with mines flooding? Well, the flooded waters become contaminated with any toxins that were either exposed or released during the mining process, and then that water becomes a vehicle to disperse those toxins as far as the water can reach. Sometimes this means into clean water supplies, lakes, rivers, tributaries, and the water that's not getting flushed into other water supplies is just simply being absorbed into the ground. And this directly impacts how much land is available for agricultural use. The other problem is the harm to the ecosystem. So mines and deep mines are home to rare and valuable organisms. Once we displace these organisms, they either have to find a new place to live, they need to adapt and figure out a way to live around it, or they simply die off. And this affects biodiversity. Diluting the biodiversity necessary for a healthy ecosystem directly impacts our food sources and our food chain. It also affects how we combat diseases. So we know it's harmful to the environment, and we know that it's harmful to the ecosystem, but what a lot of people don't know is how harmful it is to society surrounding the mine. One social challenge that's facing the mining industry right now can be seen in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The United Nations Children's Fund has seen that there are about 40,000 children workers working in mines in Congo currently. These children are being subjected to child labor and child slavery. Most of them are under the age of 10 because they are cheaper or free. We are directly and actively promoting child labor by not recycling our electronics. Another social problem that can be seen is in Bangka, Indonesia. Indonesia is a mining ground for tin. And there are 7 grams of tin in every single cell phone. Just cell phones. 7 grams of tin in every single cell phone. And in Indonesia, they are the world's second largest metal producer. Bangka produces almost 90% of Indonesia's tin. And the problem with mining in Indonesia is this requires miners to descend into hollowed pits of sand. Hollowed pits of sand. If you have ever dug a hole in the sand, you understand the problems that are inherent in digging holes in the sand. This community has lost 78 miners in less than a year due to collapsing sand pits. Additionally, these collapsing sand pits then create acidic craters. The acidic craters fill with water from rainfall. That becomes contaminated, soaks into the groundwater, directly affects their clean water supply. These are not blue lagoons in Indonesia. These are acidic craters in mining grounds in Indonesia. The only positive thing this community has to say about mining tin is that it makes them wealthier so they can send their kids to school. Again, I ask, at what cost are these benefits coming? By not properly recycling our electronics, we are causing continual mining. We are causing children to mine. We are causing miners to lose their life, continually mining a resource that we literally have sitting in our pockets right now. I know, this is really depressing, right? But wait, there's more. By not recycling our electronics properly, we're exposing ourselves to a risk daily. And if I haven't tugged at your heartstrings through scary toxins and harmful ecosystems and harmful mining practices and social injustices, then maybe I can appeal to your logical reasoning. E-waste has stored data. Lots of it. Anytime that we don't recycle our electronics properly, we are opening ourselves up to the risk for anyone to gain access to any information they want. This is secure information, personal information, financial information, bank account numbers, social security numbers, medical records, just to name a few. It's extremely important to understand your e-cycler's processes. So why? Why are we generating so much e-waste? Why are we harming ecosystems? Why are children and minors losing their lives daily? Why is the average American household spending over $1,300 a year on new electronics while simultaneously throwing away $700 worth of electronics every year? In the words of my toddler, that is crazy pants. Why? Unfortunately, there's a diabolical answer to this. And it's probably why businesses get a bad rap. And it's called planned obsolescence. Technology companies implement a design for the dump system. And it's based on Moore's law. In the 1960s, there was a professor, Professor Moore, and he discovered that we are able to double our processor speed every 18 months. It works a lot like the rule of 72 for you finance folk. It just is. It just works. And so far, he's been right. But instead of seeing that as an opportunity for innovation, companies saw that as a challenge. And rather than doubling our processor speed every 18 months, they create a new product every 18 months, rendering our old products completely obsolete. Again, I know this is depressing. It's really sad. Especially maddening to know that we are being duped into producing this much e-waste through planned obsolescence. So what can we do? Finally, some good news. Breath of fresh air, silver lining in the clouds. What can we do? There are very small things that every single one of us can do that make really big impacts. It does not require a lot of capital. It doesn't require money at all. This doesn't require you to know really important people. You don't need Elon Musk on speed dial. This requires a little bit of thought and a little bit of time. And there are literally easy solutions for everyone. You get a solution, you get a solution, you get a solution. Easy solutions for everyone. The easiest and most effective thing that you can do is focus on your current device's end of life to combat that design for the dump system. Find an e-cycler. More importantly, find an e-cycler that has two specific certifications. They need to be certified in both to really cover all the bases. One certification is the e-Steward certification, and the other certification is the R2 certification. The e-Steward certification is a third-party audited certification program that requires its certified members to immediately halt any exportation of hazardous waste and illegal dumping into landfills and incinerators. The R2 certification outlines general principles and specific practices that electronics recyclers need to follow. This includes environmental, worker health and safety, security, and even exporting electronics for refurbishment or recycling purposes. Another thing you can do is simply resell or donate your old electronics. eBay and Craigslist is a really great vehicle for this, but there's plenty of websites out there. You can also sell back your gadgets to online websites. They will pay you for your old gadgets. Just again, make sure that they have those 2 certifications. Something else that you can do is simply repurpose your electronic device. Old phones can be put in your cars used as a GPS. They can be used as music players. They can be turned into universal remote controls. They can even be used to monitor security cameras. And then finally, find companies that have buyback programs. Most companies have either online, in-store, or other drop-off locations where you can drop off your electronics and they will recycle it for you. Some of them even give gift cards in exchange for your obsolete electronics. So before you purchase an electronic, ask the company if they have a buyback program. And if they don't, find another company that does, right? This incentivizes companies to implement buyback programs if they don't already have one. So while we welcome technological advancement and we see the benefit to our society, we need to be cognizant about the negative externalities that are really easy to ignore. By understanding planned obsolescence, we can mitigate this enormous and growing problem that is e-waste.